Field underway once again, and very shortly we'll be returning to racing action. Watch Jack Jenkins now. He throws the green flag. Even the flagman needs relief occasionally. Carl Hall now turns the duties over to Jack Jenkins. Your leader continues to be Kenny St. John in car number 1. We're not sure who is in second position at this point in time, but I think, Larry, you're probably right. With the departure of Wayne Arnold, I would think that probably Lonnie Breedlove is now in second position in car number 0. Breedlove is in second position now, but he and car number 12, Wayne Arnold, are on the same lap. Wayne has some distance to make up on the racetrack. Lonnie had lost a couple of laps early in the race, but since coming back out on the racetrack has had an uneventful race to this point. Real traffic jam on the crossover. Last year, if you remember, Kenny St. John came from a 12-lap deficit to win this event. So it's entirely possible that you do not want to count Lonnie Breedlove nor Wayne Arnold out of this event. St. John has completed 231 laps. Breedlove and Arnold both with 219 to their credit.
Well, Rob, another driver we commented about briefly about 5 minutes ago. He scrapes the wall as we begin to comment about him again in turns 3 and 4. Dennis Pace in Chuck Hall's number 5 race car, the Alexis Auto Parts, the Alexis Road Auto Parts Special from the Detroit-Toledo area. I'm a little surprised that Dennis Pace has stayed in the car as long as he has. Chuck Hall, one of the top competitors of all time in figure-8 racing, who started this car. He qualified as the fastest out-of-towner in 7th position at the start of this race. And apparently at the first red flag, Hall stepped out and Pace stepped in, and he's been in it ever since, including surviving a spectacular mid-air flight through the crossover after about an hour of time had elapsed in this 3-hour endurance contest. The 1981 Indianapolis Speedrome 3-hour figure-8 enduro is what's taking place before you right now. A 3-time winner of this event. Kenny St. John is the leader right now. His 2 closest competitors who have been with him on the racetrack all night long, Lonnie Breedlove and Wayne Arnold, have both encountered mechanical problems during the last 30 minutes of the event, and both of them have dropped to 12 laps down. Now, under normal circumstances, 12 laps, of course, is a major deficit in an automobile race. But in this 3-hour endurance contest, we still have about an hour and a half to go. Remember, the course is only about a third of a lap long, or a third of a mile long, rather. And so 12 laps is certainly within reason. So this one is a long ways from being over, although right now, St. John really has everything to his liking.
Larry, what would your strategy be at this point if you were Wayne Arnold or perhaps even Lonnie Breedlove? You know that Arnold has the equipment to run right side by side with St. John. Do you charge and try to make up some of that time on the racetrack, or do you simply bide your time, drive the same smooth, consistent race that he has done so far, and hope that St. John has problems of his own?
No way would I try to charge right now, because with 12 laps down, Arnold's got to know that he's at least 8 or 10 laps down at this point. And I think if I were Arnold, I wouldn't even be charging as hard as I was when I was running on the track with St. John. He knows he is certainly well ahead of all the other competitors. I would position myself with somebody who is running perhaps in the middle of the pack and simply try to go the rest of the distance without losing any laps. I don't think there's any way that Arnold can risk charging at this particular point in the race.
Machines continually at this point in the race moving in and out of the pit area. Gary Haskett darting in there this time around. It looks like, Larry, we've still got about 20 to 24 machines on the racetrack. Another one now being added from the pit gate. So apparently another machine felt that he will not be able to continue. Look at the action in the crossover. Kenny St. John going between car number 54, which is now Dave Miller driving for Bob Stute, and car number 36, Mike Klein. So St. John, although he is substantially all by himself on the racetrack, continuing to drive very, very hard in car number 1. You know, there might be some logic to that. That is, if you get too slow and try to really pace yourself, you reach that point where you could almost become complacent, become lazy in your driving, lose your concentration, and end up being in trouble, where if you continue at a fairly rapid pace, you tend to remain more alert.
Yeah, Rob, I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, rhythm is something that's also important to a race driver. Even though this is an endurance contest, those guys pretty much had the rhythm down. They planned on racing at the beginning of the race, and as you point out, St. John continues to use it. Now we have a spin right in front of the leader, St. John. The number 54 car with Dave Miller, the relief driver, behind the wheel, spun out right underneath our flagman, Jack Jenkins, and right close by to our leaders, and Jenkins is shredding the right rear tire, that is, on the 54 car, and Jenkins goes back to the pit area. Interesting to find out now whether or not Bob Stute, the man who started that car, or started the race in that car, will return back to the speedway after they change the tire.
Car number 12, Wayne Arnold, has moved back into second position. He's gotten easily around Lonnie Breedlove, and now he's unlapped himself. One of the 12 laps, he was in arrears to your leader, Kenny St. John. So, you know, the good move by St. John now might be to simply try to keep Wayne Arnold in his sights and in his grasp. He should know that Arnold is going to be patient and wait for him to make a mistake. And if he'll just hang on and kind of let Arnold pave the way and clear the racetrack, that probably would be an advisable move. At least it will give him another vehicle by which to pace himself. At 231 laps for your leader, Kenny St. John, the rundown put Lonnie Breedlove in second with 219, Arnold in third with the same number. At 214 laps, Chuck Hall and Dennis Pace in car number 5. In fifth was Ray Gaddis in 779, some 32 laps behind your leader. Marion Hester was sixth in car number 63 with 205. Moving in on the halfway point of this one, over 1 hour and 29 minutes complete. Kenny St. John has run more than 250 laps. That means he is on a pace that would allow him to complete in excess of 500 laps in this one. And it looks like St. John may have done just exactly what we talked about, and that's tacked himself onto the tail of car number 12, Wayne Arnold. It almost cost him, though. The last time through the crossover, he wedged himself between Lonnie Breedlove and Gary Early's car number 09, and now Early gets hit. It's not Early. Driving that machine is Ray Holman, who's taken over in relief, and a couple of relief drivers get together. It's Dave Miller hitting Ray Holman. They were relievers for Bob Stute and Gary Early. Now both of them able to go on, both drivers on their brakes, and that's why they got together. It appears now Ray Holman back into the pit area in car number 09.
One fellow who continues to do just a fine job out there in the pink number 779 is Ray Gaddis. Gaddis was one of the last people to qualify among the original 24. He was the 23rd fastest qualifier. And he certainly is not one of the fastest cars in the racetrack. He's been passed by an awful lot of competitors the whole time that he's been out there. But he's been running very smooth, and right now his smoothness has allowed him to remain in fifth position. He's more than 20 laps down to the leader, but Gaddis has run a race that at only one point brought any type of difficulty to him when the car failed to fire up after one of the red flags. But Ray Gaddis in the pink number 779 continuing to motor around this racetrack and do a fine job when it comes to the categories of smoothness and consistency. No problems at the crossover, no problems at the exit, the middle of the racetrack. We haven't seen him bounce off into the outside retaining walls, and Gaddis continues to run smoothly. Gene Reed in car number 57 in the Ferrara & Sons 1976 Granada has joined the racetrack. Reed in a bright red machine was the 46th fastest qualifier for this race, and now we're down to the point where 46 of the people attempted to qualify for this event have now joined the race. 259 laps down, which means certainly that Reed doesn't have much of an opportunity for victory, but nonetheless he has an opportunity to run the last half of this race.
At the halfway mark, Larry, your leader, Kenny St. John, had completed 253 laps. That means he is at a pace that would enable him to complete 506, or nearly 30 more than he completed 1 year ago in victory. So car number 1, Kenny St. John, despite the fact that we talked earlier about he and Wayne Arnold, when they were running together, simply jockeying for position and pacing themselves, it's still a very rapid pace for your leader, as he is really flying in his Corvette car number 1. Arnold has now moved away from him, but remember, Wayne Arnold has now 11 laps to make up.
Ray Holman, relief driving for Gary Early, continues in the pits. The crew is working on the car, not only changing a right front wheel, but also changing a bent tie rod. So a lot of yeoman work going on in the pit area of the Gary Early, Ray Holman car number 09. That's one of those teams that made the long 4 or 5 hour drive down from the Detroit, Michigan area to compete here in this 3-hour endurance race.
Something you mentioned earlier bears repeating, and that is there is incentive and motivation for a driver not to be a stroker, to go out and complete as many laps as he can. Guaranteed purse of $4,000 to the winner. If, however, he completes more than 400 laps, the purse is $10 per lap completed. So at the 506 lap pace, Kenny St. John could collect $5,060, assuming he continues to lead and maintain the same rhythm and pace that he has in the first half of this event. 265 laps now complete for your leader. We move into the second half of the race.
Figure-8 racing is a form of automobile racing that actually began as a novelty or as a sidelight. The first figure-8 racing in America took place at the Islip Speedway in Islip, New York, and for a couple of years it was the only speedway in America that conducted figure-8 racing. When this aspect of the sport of automobile racing began, many said that it simply couldn't be done, it couldn't be executed. The drivers wouldn't run hard enough to make the racing exciting. But over a period of years now, it's been about 15 years since figure-8 racing actually got going in full sport and full steam. And now we've got some confusion at the crossover, as at least 5 competitors going in different directions come almost to a stop, but no major collisions, and everybody gets back underway, including Luby Allen in the number 60, a yellow 60 from the Indianapolis area, and Lethal Bulls in another yellow 60 from the Indianapolis area. Luby Allen actually from Detroit, rather. Lethal Bulls from Indianapolis. But figure-8 racing now has become a sport all of its own, and a lot of these fellows who compete in figure-8 racing do it almost full time.
Your 2 front-running automobiles, 2 of the 3 front runners in some heavy traffic now. Lonnie Breedlove, as he strives to make up some time on St. John. Remember, Breedlove is third now, a half lap behind Wayne Arnold. Kenny St. John right together with Breedlove. Arnold, it would appear, in the next few minutes may close in enough to make up another lap. And I'm a little surprised that Wayne is running as hard as he is. But right now, without question, car number 12, the fastest car on the racetrack. And Gary Gross has returned now in car number 32. After a long absence, Gary, who had been running 7th at the time of his departure, back on the racetrack, but he's about a half an hour behind and probably now 100 laps or so behind your leader. Car number A60, Luby Allen, showing a lot of smoke. I'm not sure whether that's engine smoke or tire smoke. Also number 57, appearing to have a similar problem. Looks like Luby Allen's problem is a tire coming apart in car number 60A. Again, I'm not sure, but that appears to be the problem. He continues to show a great deal of smoke. Look at the action in the crossover. Wayne Arnold almost coming together with another automobile. Car number 0, Lonnie Breedlove, is spun in the south end of the racetrack. Looks like Lonnie having difficulty getting his machine restarted. The yellow comes out. Lethal Bowles and Dave Sensney in front of traffic in the crossover. Now car number 57 has had problems. We noticed a lot of smoke billowing from that machine earlier. Now he's come to a stop. Now Breedlove under his own power once again in car number 0, but he lost a couple of laps more in the process.
Rob, with the most recent additions to the field, we have exactly doubled the number of competitors actually eligible to be on this racetrack right now. 24 cars have been added. The most recent, the number 57 of Dwayne Mertens on the speedway. A pretty well prepared blue and white, looks like a Monte Carlo. I guess that's just an old Camaro that's had a lot of body renovations done to it. Some more chrome wheels make their way to the racetrack, but 48 competitors are actually now eligible to be on the racetrack. Remember, once you are given the go-ahead by the officials to enter this race, that means you are an official entrant until the race is over. So everybody who has been in this race up to this point is eligible to come back onto the racetrack. So theoretically, we could have as many as 48 cars on this speedway before this race is over. And one of the people who has been running most of the night and running pretty well, Gary Gross, in the car number 09, they had some problems. Car number 32, rather, they had some problems earlier. Spent quite a number of laps in the pit area. Has come to a stop on the backstretch here of the Indianapolis Speedrome, and Gross is climbing out of the race car. He comes to a stop with the green number 11 of Herb Rose, and the infield of the Speedrome is now beginning to resemble a parking lot, as we've got 5 competitors who have come to a stop at various locations around the racetrack. The green flag continues as none of them are in any of the racing lanes.
Larry, about 3 machines that are pro stock regulars here at the Speedrome have continued to win their way around the racetrack without having any serious problems. Car number 2, Donnie Utterback, who now is right in front of Wayne Arnold, driving a car painted almost identical to number 12. That's because that's the car that Wayne drove all season long and winning the Pro Stock Championship. Lonnie Breedlove now briefly getting airborne in car number 0 as he came together with another machine. Also running strongly, Bill Fraser in car number 4, and now Gary Haskett gets into car number 5. And also to Bruce McFall, and 7-Eleven also involved. Looks like a radiator gone in that machine, but a chain of events taking place right in the crossover. Everybody appears to be out of trouble and out of danger. Bruce McFall trying to get number 93 underway once again. Gary Haskett dragging a bumper. Now there's a bumper sliding loose on the racetrack, and that caused trouble once before, as did a wheel. Watch out. Car number 12X has come to a stop in the crossover, and he gets nailed by 09. That's Dave Ray Holman. Gary Haskett's old front end dragging on car number 91, and he'll move back into the pit area. Looks like we may see another red flag, and there it is, car number 12X. Dave Goodwin, who's the one who has come to a stop, or Roger Goodwin, rather, in car number 12X, right in the middle of the racing groove.
Well, Rob, things had certainly become a little ragged around the edges. We now sit with the tire laying quietly and silently right in one of the paths, of the racing paths in the infield area. We had a bumper that was tumbleweeding across the infield area when this racetrack is an oval, and of course across the crossover here when it's a figure-8 racetrack. We had at least one car that had come to a stop, was sitting right in the middle of the X, the center, the nucleus, if you will, of the figure-8 course, and we had at least 5 other cars that were strewn around the infield area of the Indianapolis Speedrome.
great deal of traffic now for your leader, Kenny St. John, approaching lap number 300. Wayne Arnold now right behind him. At the time Wayne had the extended pit stop, he was 12 laps behind St. John. If he passed him again, he would close to within 9 laps. Arnold definitely making up time, but he'll need more than just a fast race car. He'll need a little bit of Lady Luck's assistance if, in fact, he's going to catch St. John before this one is over. 300 laps now. 300 laps completed by your leader, Kenny St. John. 290 by Wayne Arnold, and he screeches to a near halt or a collision as an alternative in the crossover. Jack Dandy getting together down in turn number 1 with another machine. It looks like number 711. Now they're underway once again. Wayne Arnold going around St. John yet another time. Now Arnold just 9 laps behind your leader. Wayne Arnold putting on a one-man show right now in car number 12, driving with almost reckless abandon. But if anybody can do it and get away with it, he's the man that can. And another traffic jam. Watch your 2 front runners separating to go on opposite sides of a conglomeration of automobiles in the crossover. And it looked like Kenny St. John was content to just pace himself in car number 1 until he watched the orange number 12 fly by. And there's just something about that kind of a racing challenge that neither one of these 2 guys can tolerate without responding. Once Arnold got by, even though he was still 9 laps down, Kenny St. John immediately punched the throttle and began to close on number 12. Jack Dandy spinning again in car number 4, and it looks like he is stuck. The rear end of that automobile has come to rest up on the tire down in turn number 4. Sitting there simply spinning his wheels and unable to move off of that tire down in the 4th turn, or what's the first turn in the figure-8 course. Wayne Arnold again, a daring move through the crossover. Stays out of trouble though and continues on around the racetrack. Kenny St. John in obvious hot pursuit in car number 1, despite the fact that his margin currently a comfortable one at nearly 9 laps. The red flag comes out once again. Obviously, Jack Dandy unable to get car number 4 off of the tire. It spun and backed up onto that tire that marks the infield area of the racetrack. down in the south end of the race course, and now he'll get a little assist from car number 9X, who'll push Jack off the racetrack. Unofficially, at 290 laps, the last red flag, Kenny St. John, your leader, Wayne Arnold was 11 laps down at that time. Now, we've watched him make up, we feel, a couple of laps in the interim, and we think Wayne is now 9 laps down to your leader. In third position, 16 laps down, car number 0, Lonnie Breedlove. Again, that's unofficial. Riding fourth in car number 5, Chuck Hall and Dennis Pace, who've alternated driving duties in that machine, 19 laps back. In sixth position, car number 54, the Bob Stute Dave Miller car, and they have completed 251 laps at the time your leader had 290. In seventh, driving without relief, car number 8, Dave Grayson with 242. Eighth was number 4, Bill Fraser with 237. And ninth, despite spending a lot of time in the pit area, Gary Gross had accumulated 226 laps for ninth, with Luby Allen in car number 60A 10th with 220. 70 laps, Larry, separating at that point in time the leader from the 10th place racer. Green once again, and Wayne Arnold now unofficially 9 laps down and will probably be going after St. John to try to gain another one.
Helping us with the coverage down in the pit area tonight, of course, is Gary Lee, trying to keep abreast of all the things that are happening not only on the racetrack, but where most of the action appears to be happening midway through the race here in the pit area. Gary, you got another report for us.
I think at this point, as we near 2 hours of the 3-hour event, we will get into what I would call the fatigue factor. It is very difficult to be so intense for 3 hours, and I think the fatigue factor, guys, can really impair the judgment of these drivers, the timing as they come off the corner and head for the intersection. So I think we'll see more and more close calls as the race progresses with the drivers that have been out here for all of the 2 hours, as we have seen a number of very close calls and a number of minor altercations in the crossover, because perhaps at this point the judgment is not as sharp, as crisp as it was 2 hours back.
Well, Gary, certainly very true words about the fatigue factor. The level of concentration is something that probably suffers more than anything else. It's so very difficult to continue to concentrate so hard on everything that's going on around you. You also have to start worrying about the race car, or given normal circumstances, at this point in a long race, you're checking the gauges on the dashboard. You're trying to get a feel for the condition of the tires, but now you begin to get tired. You've been out here running for 2 hours, trying to keep abreast not only of the competitors in front and on both sides of you, but as you go through that crossover, trying to utilize as much of your peripheral vision as you possibly can. And a lot of factors really begin to take over, and that level of concentration certainly has to suffer.
Collision in the crossover, more fuel on the racetrack. Car number 9X and car number 4, Bill Fraser, getting together. Fraser, the lucky one, he's able to continue on his own. Tom Barcel, who's come to a rest in front of the main grandstand, took quite a shot in the rear, and you can see now the bright red fuel tank just hanging from the rear of the car after being totally ripped apart and dumping its contents out of the racing groove.
Well, you know, Rob, during the last red flag, we found out that St. John wasn't aware that he had that big lead on Arnold, and there were those who theorized that that was the reason why St. John was racing with Arnold, because he thought he might have been going after him for position. But I tell you, St. John is still running hard out there, and it doesn't seem to make too much difference to Kenny St. John if he's a half a lap, a half a car length, or 10 laps to the front. He's still going as hard as he was at the drop of the green flag 2 hours ago, and on the clock 2.5 hours ago.
He certainly is, and just a couple of minutes ago, Wayne Arnold unlapped himself yet another time. And I felt that at that juncture, St. John might just let him go. He did not slow down and wait, however. He came right back around Wayne Arnold. So St. John still continuing to run at something very close to full throttle in car number 1 as he continues to set the pace in this one. Some 1 hour and 55 minutes into the race. Two cars together now in the crossover. Looks like car number 36. I'm not sure who the other machine is.
And they're pretty well melded together also, Rob. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to extricate themselves in that one. Both the drivers backing back and forth trying to get free. Now it looks like there is a good possibility. Some mechanical maneuvering going on, and they finally break free. The number 711 car of Mitch Reno pulls away, one of the two involved in that one. Rob, we've also reached the point now, just after the 2-hour point in this 3-hour race, where the slowest qualifier, almost all the field coming to a stop at the crossover, at least 8 or 9 cars that time coming to a halt as the traffic was just much too thick for anybody to make any moves. Rob, we had just started to comment that the slowest qualifier eligible to compete, the number 45 car of Phil Lynch, officially the 54th qualifier, has been out on the race. Make it the 57th qualifier, is now out on the racetrack. So theoretically, all 57 cars at any given point in time could now be on this speedway.
Well, in theory, that's definitely true, Larry. However, you have to feel that from this point on, we may begin to see attrition taking its toll and a dwindling of the number of the cars on the racetrack. One of the machines, Luby Allen, now rejoins competition. Sure, periodically we will see machines back on the racetrack after perhaps an hour or maybe even longer of sitting in the pit area. Wayne Arnold is definitely slowing in car number 12. Now he goes back into the pit area. So problems continue to plague the driver of car number 12. Wayne Arnold back into the pits in car number 12. He was slowing the last couple of laps, and Kenny St. John gets hit from behind as he headed toward the crossover. Fishtails dramatically for a few seconds, almost spun all the way around, but it looks like he's okay and no problems for Kenny St. John. Now been told the left rear tire on Wayne Arnold's car number 12 being changed, so all of that work that he had done to try to make up some time on Kenny St. John is going for naught as he'll spend yet a few more circuits in the pit area.
This race began with 24 competitors, the fastest 24 qualifiers of 57 entrants. We have now had a grand total of 57 different cars in this race right now on the racetrack. Unofficially, we have 24 cars as Lethal Bulls, one of the local drivers here, makes contact with the young driver from Minnesota and spins out. We have another collision at the crossover. The number 2 race car of Donnie Otterbach, who has been right in there since the beginning and running quite strong. One of our top 10 drivers is flipped from behind. That's the Pro Stock car of Wayne Arnold, and Otterbach trying to make his way back into the racing groove. 24 cars right now unofficially on the racetrack at speed. We have 3 of them sitting on the racetrack as we continue to go green. They are in positions on the speedway that does not imperil them. And so the green flag continues to be out. There are at least 3 or 4 other cars in the pit area that we know work is being done on.
Well, Larry, we've just been handed the unofficial standings after 321 laps. too bad that Wayne Arnold forced to make another pit stop, because after trailing by as much as 12 laps, he had moved himself back into contention and was only 6 laps down at that point in time. Another 11 laps back is Lonnie Breedlove in car number 0. He's third, 295 complete at the time St. John had 312. Fourth position, a lap behind Breedlove, was car number 5, the Chuck Hall Dennis Page automobile. And riding in fifth position was 779 Ray Gaddis with 277 laps. Sixth was car number 54, the Bob Stute Dave Miller car with 274. So the margin continues to widen between and among your leaders, with Kenny St. John continuing to set the pace.
Well, Rob, we got a red flag, and for a pretty darn good reason. One of the best reasons I've seen so far tonight, right at the very center of the entire universe. At least the universe for that driver. We've had a car come to a stop. It's one of the cars that was added to this field late in the race. And Rob, I can't make out its car number, but I tell you, I'm pretty glad I'm sure that he was glad to see that red flag.
That's car number 67. I believe that's the machine of Ray Spears in car number 67. Larry, before the race got underway tonight, all of the racing fans had an opportunity to pick up an entry blank for the Regency Enduro Laps Contest. And now it's time to kind of take a look at just where we might end up at the conclusion of 3 hours. With 19 seconds remaining in the first 2/3 of the race and 339 laps complete at this pace, should Kenny St. John continue to run up front, and at this pace he would complete 510 laps. So if you made the guess of 510 laps or thereabouts, you might be in pretty good shape right now. Back to green flag racing, and St. John continues to run out in front. We've now reached that 2-hour point with your leader, Kenny St. John, completing lap number 340.
Rob, you know, something else that I begin to perceive as I watch particularly the front runners make their way through the crossover successfully, the setup for getting through the intersection actually takes place about 2 full turns before you get there. After each time you pass through the intersection, you face 2 more turns, and I'm certain that you can actually see, particularly in the case of St. John and Arnold, when they're not in heavy traffic, they're looking over their left or right shoulder toward that intersection, even by the time they're about 1/5 of a mile from it. And I think they're setting up and gauging their speed that far away, actually 2 full turns before they make their pass through the crossover.
Well, I think that's an accurate observation. That is what they do. A lot of times you'll see, and a couple of cars together, Bill Fraser, car number 4, tangling with Cecil Carr in 98X, and your leader right there with him, and car number 779, Ray Gaddis. So that involved the 4th place car, or 5th place car rather, Ray Gaddis. Now Bill Fraser apparently loose. It looks like he's got some problems in his car. 779 and 98X, Ray Gaddis and Cecil Carr still trying to free themselves from one another. Gaddis in 779 gets loose and under his own power, but Cecil Carr still sitting unmoved in the racing groove in car number 98X. Out comes the red flag yet another time. Very conveniently, we can give you the rundown at the end of 338 laps and fill you in on the top 5. The leader at that point in time was Kenny St. John with 338 complete. Wayne Arnold was still second in car number 12 at 328. That, remember, despite the fact that he had closed to within 6 laps prior to having to make a green flag pit stop to replace a tire. Arnold 10 laps back at that point. Another 11 back, or another 9 back rather, Lonnie Breedlove in car number 0. Lonnie had completed 319, 19 laps behind your leader Kenny St. John. 4th position belonged to car number 5, the machine of Chuck Hall and Dennis Pace. He had completed 317 laps. And in 5th position was car number 779, Ray Gaddis, with 302. Marion Hester now has turned over the driving duties of car number 63 to another regular pro stock driver here at the Speedrome, Paul Hoaxang. Hoaxang has taken over number 63 for Marion Hester now. Wayne Arnold has just made his way around your leader Kenny St. John once again to now be 9 laps down as opposed to 10, and every time Wayne able to make up a few in traffic, he loses them again in the pit area. Once again, St. John not letting him get away, tagging himself right onto the tail of car number 12, and he'll chase him around the racetrack. Dandy spinning in car number 4A. Remember a bit earlier, he backed on that tire in that exact same location of the racetrack, and we had to bring out the red in order to get him off of it. This time he missed the tire, but he did spin. Fortunately, nobody in his way, and he stayed out of trouble. Bill Tunney Jr. spinning in car number 57.
Approximately 2 hours and 10 minutes into this 3-hour endurance contest. This is the National Championship Figure-8 race, a 3-hour endurance event at the Indianapolis Speedrome in Indianapolis, Indiana. What you're seeing now are the survivors of a field that is actually numbered as many as 57 at one time or another here in the race tonight. 24 started, and as individual competitors dropped off, others who were among the slowest qualifiers behind the first 24 have been added to the field. With a little more than 2 hours having elapsed, we're down to about 18 or 19 competitors still on the racetrack, and another 20 in the pit area actually eligible to come back out if their crews would be successful in making the repairs. One of the competitors, a number 57 race car, the car that hauled the 700 miles from Minnesota thinking this racetrack was dirt, Dwayne Mertens, is having an overheating problem. He has just returned to the pits. And meanwhile, out on the racetrack, Kenny St. John, a man who has won more money here than any other driver in the history of the Indianapolis Speedrome. Looks like he's headed for another $4,000 plus payday here at the Speedrome tonight. The winner's share of tonight's $13,000 purse will be $4,000 or $10 for each completed lap. And St. John is on a pace right now that would take him to more than 500 completed laps in the 3 hours of racing. St. John has completely turned back all of the competitors. He has beaten everybody down on the racetrack, and right now the only enemy that Kenny St. John has are the elements, the race car, the racetrack, and perhaps a little bit of his own fatigue. Kenny St. John, the big black, orange, and gold #1 Corvette stock car, the fastest qualifier in this race. He has led the biggest majority of the laps on the speedway, and right now he has about a 10-lap cushion, but still, believe it or not, a long ways to go. About 50 minutes remain in the race. This race is not being scored on the basis of laps completed, but on the basis of a lap time. And 2 hours and 11 minutes, or a little more than 360 laps, are now complete. St. John continues to lead with a 10-lap lead over Wayne Arnold, who runs second. Now here's a rundown from about 10 minutes ago when we had completed 346 laps. Lonnie Breedlove continues to motor in third position. Breedlove was up among the leaders in terms of laps completed for about the first half hour of this race, but he's incurred several minor problems along the way. The crew has changed several tires. They had a transmission leakage problem that they solved, and Breedlove is back on the racetrack in his radically designed ground effects or airfoiled race car. In fourth position is the Chuck Hall Dennis Pace team. The original driver, Chuck Hall, back behind the wheel of the number 5 car. Hall was the fastest qualifier among the non-local drivers who qualified for this race. They are 24 laps down to the leader, St. John. Ray Gaddis, one of the slowest qualifiers among that original 24. He started 23rd in the race, has simply been out there all night long, just hanging in there. He has completed 307 laps, and he runs in the 5th position. In 6th spot is the Bob Stute Dave Miller team, car number 54. 7th is Dave Grayson in car number 8. In 8th position, Bill Fraser, a man who finished in the top 5 here a year ago. 9th is Gary Early in car number 09, and 10th, Donnie Utterback in car number 2. But Utterback, who lost his brakes about 15 laps ago, has parked the car for the night. So Utterback, though he shows up as 10th position in the standings, is actually out of the event.